It is my understanding that Mr. Cardenas is feeling the traffic crunch this morning and didn't want to keep you waiting, so he asked me to get things started. It's Wednesday, February 8th, in this HCED meeting. Mr. CLA.
Yes, sir.
You feeling good this morning?
I feel excellent today.
Then let's go through the agenda.
Okay.
The first item.
Item number 1, continued for meeting of February 1st, 2012. LEHD and CEO report relative to LEHD's loan portfolio performance for program years 2009-10 and 2010-11.
Okay, now did I hear you say we were going to continue this item?
Yes.
Okay. And then it's my understanding we're also going to continue item 3 as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so why don't you just read that into the record?
Okay. Item number 3, LEHD report and resolution relative to the adoption of TEPRA resolution and minutes for the Banco Popular project located at 354 South Spring Street.
Okay, now I think I should announce, Mr. City Attorney, that we do not have a quorum, and all actions taken today will be a communique from the chair. Let's move to item 2.
Item number 2, continued from February 1st, 2012. LEHD report and City Attorney report and ordinance and CAO report relative to various actions to effectuate the sale to Restore Neighborhoods LA of city-owned residential property located at 851 West 81st Street.
Okay, are there any public comment on this, Mr. Clerk?
I did have one announcement. This item will be in council on Friday, February the 10th.
Okay, then why don't, without objection, we move that as a communique from the chair. We will skip item 4 at this point, and let's go into items 5 and 6.
Item number 5, motion Garcetti Reyes Rosenthal relative to an instruction to the LEHD and CLA and a request to the City Attorney to report back on the feasibility of implementing a mandatory mortgage modification mediation program. Item number 6, motion Garcetti Rosenthal Labange relative to an instruction to the LEHD and CLA and a request to the City Attorney to report back on whether there is more the city can do to improve the disclosures consumers receive from reverse mortgage refinancing, which typically impacts low-income seniors.
Okay, without objection, we'll move those items, Mr. City Attorney, again as a communique from the chair. That brings us to item 4, I believe.
Yes, sir. Item number 4, motion Garcetti Cardenas relative to an instruction to LEHD and the CLA to provide updated data on foreclosures in the city, the use of California Housing Finance Agency hardest hit housing funds to modify mortgages in default, and an analysis on the amount of federal funds allocated towards mortgage modifications received by the city, and a request to the City Attorney to provide data on the number of mortgage consumer fraud complaints, and a report on developing litigation in response to banks, investment groups violating city foreclosure ordinances.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In fact, before we start, I have Guadalupe Gonzalez would like to speak on this. Would you come forward, Guadalupe? Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. My name is Guadalupe Gonzalez. I live in 133114 East 45th Street in Los Angeles. I work like an organizer in community group ACE, it's Alliance for California for Community Empowerment. And then I'm here to support Garcetti motions because, like organization, we saw a lot of people lose their homes and suffer for this. And then we are here for support that. Thank you.
No, thank you. And based on your recommendation, I think I'm going to side with you on this issue and at the end of the day recommend that we move forward on this motion. Now, again, thank you, Ms. Gonzalez.
Good morning, Mr. Wesson. I'm Clay McCarter from the CLA's office, and the joint report before you provides updated data on several pieces that were requested by council. This report includes the number of foreclosures in the city and the impact on the local gross domestic product, the single and multifamily properties in some stage of foreclosure, the number of canceled or postponed foreclosure sales, use of hardest hit housing funds within the city, the federal mortgage modification programs, city efforts to combat foreclosures, and an update from the city attorney on consumer fraud complaints and recent litigation against banks. I'll provide you with an overview on the foreclosures in the city. Since 2007, over 61,000 units have been foreclosed. Despite a slight 7.7% decrease from 2009 to 2010, foreclosures continue to exceed by large margins those levels seen before the economic crisis. To provide you with more specific data on single-family homes and condos, their foreclosures currently total 2,078 for the third quarter of this year. And that's up from a pre-crisis total of 553 in the first quarter of 2007. In the category of the 2 to 4 multifamily properties, in Q1 2007, it was only 77 properties. In this latest data we have, Q3 2011, there were 290 foreclosed properties. For the category 5 or more units, multifamily, the pre-crisis level was 2 properties totaling 10 units, and our latest data for Q3 2011, there was a total of 23 foreclosed properties comprising 245 total units. Moving on, if we look at the impact of these foreclosures on the local GDP, we determined that in 2009, the foreclosures contributed to a $30.6 billion drop in GDP for the Los Angeles, Long Beach, Santa Ana metropolitan area compared with 2008 levels, which is a significant decline, a decrease of 4.4%. Council also instructed us to determine how many Los Angeles properties were in some stage of foreclosure. And a good barometer of looking at that is the notice of default count, which is the first step in the foreclosure process, the first official step. And according to DataQuick, which is the company that LAHD uses for all the foreclosure numbers, from Q1 2007 to Q4 2011, approximately 137,000 properties received a notice of default in the city of Los Angeles.
Why do you guys like to go Q1 through Q4? Couldn't you just say quarter, first quarter? Q1.
I could.
Mr. City Attorney, Q1. Mr. Clerk, you look Q3. Q2, Mr. CLA? All right.
I'll say from 2007 to 2011, approximately 137,000 properties received a notice of default in the city. And to provide you with the most recent fourth quarter data, a total of 5,729 notice of defaults were filed in the city.
Now, I was just sitting in a meeting with a guy 2 days, went to Monday, and he was just cue this and cue, and I had to say, stop. Anyway, go on.
Sorry. The council also requested that we look at the number of canceled or postponed foreclosure sales. And unfortunately, DataQuick, which we use for our numbers, does not provide us with that information. So we're unable to provide that at this time. One other piece of information is the use of hardest hit funds. In 2010, the Department of Treasury announced this fund, and California received almost $2 billion to establish programs that would help homeowners that were facing foreclosure. And the state of California started the Keep Your Home California program, and that money was used to establish 4 programs, which we can get into later if you have other questions about it. And to give you some scope of the use of these programs, since September 2010, almost 4,400 borrowers have received some form of assistance out of nearly 18,000 applicants. And of this total, only 716, which is 16.4%, reside in Los Angeles County.
We're joined by Mr. Ed Reyes.
We also examined federal mortgage modification programs, and the federal government offers numerous programs to assist households during this foreclosure crisis. I'd like to focus on one quickly, the Home Affordable Modification Program, or HAMP program. it lowers the monthly payment to 31% of the borrower's monthly gross income. And if we examine the usage of this program, the Los Angeles, Long Beach, Santa Ana area is the most active metropolitan area in the country, with nearly 7,000 active trials, and 54,000 modifications. And if you total that up and look at the complete area, there's nearly 62,000 active modifications currently ongoing in that program, which comprises 7.5% of the total HAMP activity in the nation. So it's the greatest in the nation.
Okay.
Real quick, recently President Obama released a plan to stabilize the housing market, and this includes several key provisions. The first is that the President has his revamped housing plan is designed to increase the number of borrowers eligible for refinancing at these very historically low interest rates. The plan also includes calls for a homeowner bill of rights to make the mortgage application process simple and transparent.
Does he need help of the Congress to make this a reality?
Yes, he does.
Okay, then why don't you just skip to the end?
Okay. And
Because they're not going to do anything until after November.
And the last part of our report is we talked about the city attorney. The council requested that the city attorney update the council on its actions regarding the foreclosure crisis, and it asked specifically for complaints relating to mortgage fraud. The city attorney reports that it has received only 4 complaints relating to mortgage fraud, and they explain this by saying that these crimes are felonies and typically handled by the district attorney or U.S. attorney. And they also provide a summary in our report about their lawsuit against Deutsche Bank, which they filed in May 2011.
Okay.
And, yeah.
That was a pretty thorough report, so I congratulate you on that. Did you want to at least say who you are so that your boss will know that you came to work this morning?
Yes. I'm Doug Swager, and I'm glad to be here Q1 2012 with the Los Angeles Housing Department.
Good to see you. Mr. Reyes, if you have no questions, then, or it looks like you do. Mr. Reyes.
Yeah, well, first, the Harbor Freeway is backed up all the way from Exposition all the way through the 5. So
I heard.
I'm wondering if our colleagues are stuck there too.
No, that's, Mr. Cardenas is caught somewhere else. I mean, it's a rough day.
But given this, the status, this date, and I'm sorry I missed the beginning, what happens from here with this data? Where does this go, or how does it start to correlate with policy? Can you give us a sense of perspective as to now what in terms of this study?
Go ahead. Yes, sir, Councilman Reyes. You know, I say the data has helped us and continues to help us, I guess, keep the issue on the forefront, at least as we're trying to deal with and negotiate with the banks. We've been, attempting for over 2 years now to get a foreclosure modification program in place, and the funding's there, the program's in place, the policies are in place, and the only thing missing, frankly, are the banks to participate. We've got essentially 2 programs that we've put into place. Bank of America has agreed to participate in one of them, but they've yet to identify borrowers that we can help modify their loans. We've got another program in place where it looks like some smaller banks like One West will participate, and so we continue to stay on top of the data, not only on the front end for the modifications, but also on the back end as we implement the neighborhood stabilization program to sort of drive where we go to acquire properties as, the foreclosure, as the numbers change. It's been relatively consistent that the vast majority of foreclosures are down in South Los Angeles and up in the San Fernando Valley. And that's where, we've been most active. As we track this information, and if it changes, over the next year, and we see it moving to other places in the city, it'll enable us to sort of go in that direction to try and go in those neighborhoods to stabilize them. The other thing it does is, as we evolve, or I guess the the response to the crisis evolved. Now the administration is, they put a lot of effort into the HAMP program to try and help people that are in trouble, in foreclosure, to get modifications. And now we're seeing a transition to where they're focusing their efforts on programs to help people that aren't necessarily in default, but have kept up with their mortgage payments, to try and help them get modifications or lower interest rates, refinancings for lower interest rates. And, as we continue, we're starting to see some of the banks getting sued by their investors for not moving fast enough, and they're transferring entire portfolios of loans to other agencies. And as they do that, to modify them, we get approached by these other agencies so that we can, attempt to implement these programs with them as well.
But we're at a point, and I've several constituents who I've asked us, how do I do this? They don't trust the bank anymore. They don't trust the people with suits anymore. They were told before, if you follow this process, this will happen, and just the opposite occurs. So, and the numbers are staggering. We're talking in the thousands, and especially when you look at the different types of properties, it's in the thousands, and it tends to concentrate on the poverty pockets of the city, as you were mentioning, pockets around downtown and the pockets in the valley. So you have, coupled with that, the language barrier, understanding institutions, the fear now, and the lack of trust. So who are we? I mean, it's kind of like the old adage of teaching people how to fish. I mean, if you teach them how to defend themselves, then maybe they can organize with themselves to deal with banks, because I don't see us having the staff to do this, quite frankly. And so how are we in any way trying to be proactive in teaching people, okay, if this happens, these are the questions you need to ask. If these are the responses you're getting, then you need to take it to this place. Is there any kind of orientation? Because you're getting all these infomercials, attorneys saying, if you come to us, we will lower your mortgage. But they don't tell you how much they're going to charge you. They don't tell you how much they're going to take away from your assets. So that's the question, is, do we have that ability, capacity, or are we so overwhelmed that we can't get there? That's why I want to get a sense of where we're at as a city.
Those are great questions, Councilman. Rushmore Cervantes with the Housing Department. There are organizations that provide that form of outreach to the local constituents to try to address how to work out their mortgages. But the issues are much larger than that. First of all, we're the second largest city in the United States, and we have a significant amount of foreclosures. And we're having a great difficulty dealing with it and trying to get the banks to engage. As Doug mentioned, the state received close to $2 billion in hardest hit funds, and the banks really are not engaging. So this is goes to the state and goes to the federal government level, where there's monies being put out there for the banks to take, but they're not really engaging. Our office worked just on a pilot program.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that means. The money's out there, but they're not engaging.
There are
What does that
available
mean?
from the federal government through the Treasurer's Office for the hardest hit funds, various programs that have been made available for the past year and a half, in forms of write-downs of the mortgages, assistance in various manners to assist the homeowners to write down the principal or interest in their mortgages. But the banks are not engaging. They're not taking the money. Even though the money is made available for them, there's a shared sacrifice. The federal government wants to provide some monies. It would require some forgiveness on the bank's part, but it doesn't matter how much money is being made available if the banks are not engaging in the programs that are with monies being made available by the federal government. It's very challenging for the state and the local level. I think that the motion and the report here that's made available, and you talk about the issues at hand.
Okay, but there's a reciprocation here.
Yes.
We're saying the money's there, but the banks don't want to engage.
Correct.
These are our constituents. Their money is within our coffers, how we use our discussion. I think that's been Councilman Alarcon's mantra, is why are we making these banks accountable for not engaging? Yet we put our millions of dollars in their accounts. So the reciprocation here is what's becoming clear, or the non-responsiveness as you've defined it.
Correct.
So why aren't we bringing in the bank executives and asking those questions, having them here? And if they don't, let's use other means to use our funds. And I think that's what Councilman Alarcon has been
Right.
trying to say.
Certainly, through the responsible banking ordinance that Councilman Alarcon has championed, part of the provision is to provide information, I believe it's monthly or quarterly, on banks' participation. And through that information that would ultimately be made available through that ordinance, I think that we'd be able to bring forward these banks and ask the hard questions why they're not participating in these programs.
Okay, so in the meantime, people continue to lose their homes.
But, we try to, unfortunately, most of our funds are on the back end, neighborhood stabilization program. We try to go through it, address the foreclosure issues through education. But, there's only so much money is made available. I just share with you, it was through working with Wells Fargo, the city engaged in a program just last Friday and Saturday where they've actually stepped up. They're offering up to $30,000 in soft seconds to acquire properties here in the city of LA, which would become grants after 5 years. So there's small kernels here and there of banks starting to step forward and trying to engage with the city of LA, but I think that there has to be more robust conversation with the major banks in the country to bring them to the table here, because we're the second largest city in the United States with a significant foreclosure issue. We should be bringing them to the table.
So given this report, because I'll make sure I'm consistent with the dialogue before the city attorney tells her mouth face here. Is the city attorney's office working with the housing department, working with the different departments that have the ability to connect with our constituents, to have this next step, if you will? I mean, are we there yet?
We have not engaged with the city attorney's office, only in complaints such as the Deutsche Bank matter, but beyond that, Councilman, no, we have not at this point.
But I'm shooting from the hip here, but let's say if every council member were to list banks in their Facebook of all the banks that were not responding, that's public pressure, right?
Sure.
I mean, if we started using our public means by which to create pressure, that's a response. But we're not really there yet.
Mr. Reyes, you know what we can do? We can ask the chair to invite representative from the Bankers Association to come to committee so that we can question as to why they're not being engaged. I would be optimistic that they would send somebody that might be able to answer our questions. At least it would be somebody that we could inform how serious we feel about this. But anyway, I was saying maybe we should just, Big Jim, at this time, Mr. Reyes and I are requesting that the chair try to arrange that as soon as possible. And where it relates to Mr. Alarcon's Responsible Banking Act motion, I hope that by the end of this month, it'll be before council. I think Mr. Krikorian told me it's like going to be heard on his second or third budget meeting.
And I appreciate that, Councilman Weston. I think we're at a stage where the folks in our own districts are losing faith in us and not responding for them. And I know I get that pressure every time I'm out in the community. In this report, is it broken down by district?
We have a total on a graph in the report that provides the total of number of units foreclosed by council district from 2007 to 2011.
So I agree with Councilman Weston. Perhaps we should get those institutions, entities that either represent the banks as a whole, but tend to be faceless and not holding any one bank accountable yet. But I think we're going to have to get to a place where we can exercise that pressure and make them realize just how deep this is for our constituents and what it's causing us from the detriment that just the detrimental impact that's having in our communities. So should we do it as a formal motion or just a formal request? In terms of getting...
I would hope that we could just instruct our staff to make that happen. Mr. City Attorney, do we need to do it as a motion?
Well, since you don't have a quorum, there wouldn't be the ability to make a formal motion.
Okay,
Well, I hereby appoint you a fully vested member. I know you'll vote with me and Mr. Reyes.
Just one last point. Is there an information sheet that speaks to the organizations that are advocating for individuals who do not speak English, or people that are about to lose their homes or in the process of fighting back? Is there a sheet that gives them phone numbers and organizations that you mentioned or referred to, so that they can at least have someone to talk to? Because right now what's going on is that people that are being pushed out are talking to neighbors who are going through the same thing. They're comparing notes, and they're basically doing it, so saying in the neighborhood, a la brava, just like by the sheer wits that they have, they're doing what they can to defend themselves.
We do have that
As
list.
if the city doesn't exist.
We do have that list, and we were speaking of putting it on our website. I'm not certain it's been posted yet, but certainly we can make that available.
If there can be a link for our council offices, that would help. The information sheet we can send out to the churches and the schools, so that way these people get to see that they can they have people that can defend them.
We'll certainly do that, Councilman.
Thank you.
Okay. We'd already closed public hearing on this item, but I do have one last card from Yvonne Jimenez, so I'll give you a quick minute. And
Thank you.
good morning.
I'm Yvonne Maria Jimenez, the Deputy Director of Neighborhood Legal Services of LA County. We're collaborative partners with the Los Angeles Housing Department on the Los Angeles Modification Program. And for your constituents, to answer your question directly, our program holds foreclosure clinics twice a month, first and third Tuesday of the month in the evening, and we will see homeowners from whatever district in the city of Los Angeles. So that would help your constituents. We educate, we vet, we have pro bono counsel, so there's that resource there. Through One LA, we're having educational forums throughout the city through the faith-based institutions to advise homeowners, and in particular Spanish-speaking homeowners, of their rights, and we'll direct them to resources. A couple of things. Councilman Wesson, the city of Los Angeles, through this program, Hardest Hit program, has been awarded actually up to $10 million in Hardest Hit funds to use in the Los Angeles Modification Program in the city. Now, as Mr. Swager said, One West is participating. However, they have a very small portfolio in the city. We only need one national bank to participate, and that's the Bank of America. It's my understanding in a report a few weeks back that the City of Los Angeles has provided over $50 million in new depositors to the national banks. $10 million is not even a blip on their screen. The fact that if Bank of America could be brought to the table to participate in this program and use the $10 million, otherwise they're going to be returned unused to Washington.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes and I are going to try to get them seated before us. Okay.
Thank you.
So on that item, Mr. Reyes, I would suggest that we approve this without objection, and Mr. Cardenas may be requesting some report backs or what have you. Is there any more? Oh, now we have a quorum. Mr. Alarcon is here. Mr. CLA, on some of the items that we had earlier that we moved as communiques from the chair, since we have a quorum, if we could, that be a recommendation from the committee now, unless Mr. Alarcon has a problem with that. So, and that, like I said, so we moved the last item.
Right.
And is there any more business?
What was the, on item number 4, what was the,
We've moved it.
what was?
We're gonna, well, one of the things that Mr. Reyes and I talked about, and we're leaving this in the hands of the chair. He may want to request report backs. If it were me, I would have instructed them to, report back on some things. But I don't want to step on his jurisdiction, so we just moved the item. We made a recommendation that the chair bring the bankers before us, request that representatives from the Banking Association come before this committee to discuss why they're not engaged when there is some monies available to help with the modification of mortgages. So basically, we're just moving this now, and
Could I just
And we're also asking for references, listings, or organizations that can help people with low mod, for modifications. We're also asking for a status on the different districts and the impacts on different districts and different types, to complement what Councilmember Weston was
I
saying.
didn't know, but did any of the departments provide information as to which banks are foreclosing?
Not the specific.
Could we have that broken down?
I think it's an excellent suggestion. And I also indicated that I'm hopeful that where it relates to your banking responsibility, that that's supposed to be heard within the next week or two.
Thank you,
From
Mr. President.
the budget chairman is committed to do that.
Yeah, but I also wanted to say that, just as a matter of, just as a point of information, that Berkeley just divested from Wells Fargo Bank $300 million because of their actions relative to the foreclosure industry. The reason that took the foreclosure issue, but the reason that caught my attention is because our singular deposit, the bank that we deposit in is Wells Fargo, and I think we should take a closer look at that relationship.
All right. Okay, so we've moved this item.
So then, as committee actions, continue items 1 and 3 and approve items 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Yes. And is there any more business before this committee?
Pardon me, Councilmember. For clarification on item number 2, the committee is adopting the ordinance and the CAO recommendations?
Yes.
Okay.
I forgot that part. Okay, then this committee's adjourned.
All right.